In part 1, we talk about the parts of the brain responsible for a lot of our actions, both intended and unintended. We look at the different defense responses that our Dino brain uses in order to keep us safe, and then we take an overview of the stages leading up to a meltdown and after. There are 3 key parts of the brain involved in meltdowns. I find it helps to think of these parts of the brain as 3 characters. Our air traffic controller, our logic brain, which checks everything coming in and decides the best plan of action. Our panic monkey, our health and safety officer, part of the limbic system, which is an emotional, not logical response. This is part of our neuroception, our sense of safety or danger. Panic monkey is there to spot any potential hazards and alert the air traffic controller. But if the air traffic controller is too busy, or it's too urgent, our lizard brain is called up. This is our amygdala, our autonomic defense system. Although I prefer Dino brain because a lizard just can't cause the damage that happens in a meltdown. We like to think our air traffic controller is in charge and does our thinking for us. Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes our panic monkey or even our Dino brain takes charge. Be honest. Has there ever been a time when you've shouted and instantly regretted it, or lost your temper and done something you regret, or been aggressive to someone and don't know why? This is true for pretty much everyone, because whether we're autistic or not, we all have our own panic monkeys and Dino brains. It's just, for autistics, this defensive duo can be a lot more active. For autistics, minor stressors like, we're going to be late, or my co-worker's annoying, can feel like something's going to destroy my life. I'm about to get fired. Stressors. It can completely disrupt our ability to think and function. So understanding what sets panic monkey off is essential to getting everything else right. Quick question. How many defense responses do you think Dino brain has? Well done if you said 6, because this fact is not as well known as it should be. There are 6 protective responses for Dino brain to choose from, so it's entirely possible you've been witnessing a protective response and not realised. The first pair are the well-known ones, fight and flight. These are self-defense moves, fight off the attacker or run away, entirely within our control. They're often known as meltdown behaviours. The second 2 are the least well-known, flood and fawn. These are what I call a hero hunting response. Dino brain is looking for a protector to persuade others we aren't a threat and need someone to step in on our behalf. Flood is what I call my wailing snot monster. It's a very strong display of distressed emotions. Others would call me a drama queen or accuse me of putting it on, but in reality I hate that my body does this. It's humiliating. Fawn is the excessive people pleaser. This is someone who sees an attacker and tries to get them on their side. You desperately want to maintain a friendship with the person that's hurting you. You're the eager volunteer. You're constantly hunting for approval to show that for now, at least, you're safe. And finally, there's flop and freeze, what is often labelled as shutdowns. Flop is the quiet person, the drifty daydreamer, the passively compliant person. And it can feel like you're locked in a box in the middle of an electrical storm, but from the outside, it looks perfectly normal. Freeze is the disconnected person, the dissociation. You're suddenly sleepy or you're catatonic. I've been catatonic a few times in my life, and of all Dino brain's choices, that's the most terrifying for me. I'm locked out, my body won't respond, but I'm aware of everything that's going on. Dino brain has decided that playing dead is the safest way to go, and until panic monkey gives the all clear, I'm stuck. Now, everybody has these responses. For most people, what causes panic monkey and Dino brain to take charge are really obvious, clear threats, like somebody pulling a gun on you. But when we talk in terms of trauma, we usually talk in terms of big events, accidents, war, physical or emotional abuse. But for autistics, because our nervous system is much more vulnerable, our air traffic controller works much harder, and our panic monkey and Dino brain are much more active. So these triggers are not obvious at all to the outside observer, or even to the person experiencing it. As a child, If you asked me what was going on, I didn't have the slightest notion. I just thought my body and my brain were really annoying and didn't behave themselves, and then let me take the blame. So what happens when Panic Monkey sees a threat? First, it tries to alert our air traffic controller so they can do something about it. We get anxious and on edge, ready to take evasive action. If we can avoid at that point and regulate, all's well, the anxiety drops. But what if our air traffic controller is too busy, or Panic Monkey doesn't know what the threat is or where it's coming from, or can't take the defensive action it needs to? Now Panic Monkey scales up the anxiety from threat to survival. If action isn't taken immediately, as far as Panic Monkey is concerned, we may die. For me, it now feels like Panic Monkey is bouncing frantically around the control room, trying to get air traffic controller's attention and fritzing up all my controls in the process. And now the air traffic controller is even less in control because it's trying to deal with Panic Monkey and the damage instead of the threat. In addition, we've now got Dino Brain who's starting to get involved, and they're taking their own defensive actions as well as starting to flood the brain with the chemicals it needs for defensive responses. At this point, only about 50% of my actions are my conscious choice. If someone steps in and offers me an exit, I'm capable of taking it, but I can no longer figure out the exit for myself. Finally, Dino Brain takes full charge and takes over, and locks the air traffic controller out of the control room. From this point on, Dino Brain is large and in charge, and Dino doesn't do dialogue. It's a fully autonomic protective response. Only when Panic Monkey tells Dino Brain the threat is over will Dino Brain stand down. And we need to remember that there's a recovery time after meltdown, depending on the severity of the meltdown. If it's a minor tremor, it might be a couple of hours. If it's a full blitz earthquake, it could be several days that we have a meltdown hangover. We will have a lot of emotional chemicals, an overdose of them still flooding our brain. And it could be a time when autistics consider a permanent exit just to avoid the pain of that meltdown happening again. And also because of those emotional chemicals, which is telling us that everything that is wrong in our life is down to us and there's no point and we may as well quit, and we need to hear from somebody else that this is temporary, that these feelings are temporary, and that once those emotional chemicals are gone, we won't feel like that anymore. We need that support. From my research, I have found that there are 5 key reasons that will cause Panic Monkey and Dino Brain to be more active. Sensory, processing, energy, environment, damage. Speed for short. These are covered in much greater depth in our online 6-week course. In this course, we go into detail about the 5 elements of speed, both the causes and the solutions. Obviously, in an hour seminar, all I can give is a quick overview. But in week 1, we look at our air traffic controller, Panic Monkey and Dino Brain in a lot more depth, really getting to understand how the 3 interact. We go through all the stages of the meltdown and talk about what it feels like from the inside. We look at how to spot the external warning signs so that you can act sooner and avoid Dino Brain becoming large and in charge. We look at tools that both you and your child can use to regulate and settle Dino Brain and Panic Monkey so that air traffic controller is back in charge where you want him to be.